The golden ships came down from the sky on a Tuesday morning. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, their surfaces covered in patterns that seemed to move and dance like living things. The whole world stopped to watch as 12 massive vessels positioned themselves above the largest cities on Earth. Captain stood on the deck of the aircraft carrier USS Washington, her eyes fixed on the ship hovering over New York City. She had served 20 years in the Navy, had seen things that would break most people, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "What are your orders, Captain?" asked Lieutenant, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We wait," said, "we watch and we get ready." The aliens made contact 3 hours later. They broadcast their message on every screen, every radio, every device on the planet. Their voices were deep and musical, speaking in a language that somehow everyone could understand. "People of Earth," the voice said, we have watched your world for 10,000 of your years. We have guided your development. We have shaped your civilizations. We are your creators. We are your gods." The world went silent. In churches and temples, people fell to their knees. In government buildings, leaders scrambled to understand. In military bases, soldiers gripped their weapons and wondered what good bullets would do against beings from the stars. The continued, "We come now to claim what is ours. You have grown enough. You have developed enough. Now you will serve us as all our creations eventually serve us. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is simply the way of things. You have 7 days to prepare yourselves for integration into the empire." Then the broadcast ended, and the world erupted into chaos. Watch the news feeds pour in from around the globe. Some nations were already preparing to surrender. Religious leaders were declaring this the end times or the fulfillment of prophecy. Riots broke out in dozens of cities. The stock markets crashed. People hoarded food and water. But notice something else too. In the panic and the fear, she saw people helping each other. Neighbors checking on neighbors, strangers sharing supplies, communities coming together instead of falling apart. "Humans are strange creatures," she muttered to herself. The first ambassadors came down on the 3rd day. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin that shimmered like polished gold. Their eyes were black pools that reflected nothing. They moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, as if gravity was just a suggestion they sometimes followed. They called themselves the Divine Speakers, and they came with demands: resources, labor, obedience. They spoke to world leaders like adults addressing children, patient but firm. "You do not understand your place in the universe," said the one called to the United Nations Assembly. "We have seeded life on 1,000 worlds. We have guided the evolution of countless species. Everything you are, everything you have ever been, exists because we allowed it. Your science, your art, your love, your hate, all of it was designed by us." Watch this broadcast too, from a secure bunker in Virginia, where military leaders from a dozen nations had gathered. They had been arguing for hours about how to respond. "We can't fight them," said General, the commander of U.S. forces. "Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours, maybe millions." "Then we negotiate," said Colonel from Russia. "We find out what they really want, and we give them as little as possible." "They want everything," said Dr. Sarah, a physicist who had been studying the energy readings from the ships. "Their ships are powered by something we can't even measure properly. They could vaporize our entire planet if they wanted to." Had stayed quiet through most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. "Has anyone asked them why?" The room fell silent. "Why what?" General asked. "Why did they make us? Why did they guide our development? Why did they wait 10,000 years to show up? If they wanted slaves, they could have taken us when we were still living in caves. If they wanted resources, they could have mined our planet before we even existed. So why now? Why this way?" Doctor frowned. "I don't understand what you're getting at." "I'm saying that none of this makes sense," said. "Gods don't need to announce themselves. They don't give their creations 7 days to prepare. They don't send ambassadors. This whole thing feels like a performance. A performance for who? Asked. Didn't have an answer for that, not yet. The next day, she got permission to lead a small team to New York, where they had established their main embassy in the ruins of the United Nations building. They had reshaped it with their technology, turning the familiar structure into something that looked grown rather than built. Brought 3 people with her: Lieutenant, Doctor, no relation, and a linguist named who had been studying the communication patterns. Their language is strange, said as they approached the building. It's almost too perfect. Every word, every phrase, it's designed to inspire awe and submission. But there are gaps, inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Asked. Well, for one thing, they claim to have been watching us for 10,000 years, but their references to our history are vague. They talk about guiding us, but they never mention specific events. It's like they read a summary of human civilization instead of actually watching it happen. Inside the embassy, they were met by a called. Like the others, was beautiful and terrifying, radiating a presence that made want to bow down and worship. But she didn't bow. She met black eyes and spoke clearly. I am captain of the United States Navy. I have questions. His mouth curved into what might have been a smile. You may ask, little one, though understanding our answers may be beyond your simple mind. Try me, said. Led them through corridors that seemed to breathe and pulse with strange light. The walls were covered in murals depicting thee as mighty figures standing over countless worlds, their golden forms towering above smaller, simpler creatures. These are the worlds we have created, explained, gesturing at the images. Each one a testament to our power, each one a source of strength for the empire. Studied the murals carefully. The creatures shown bowing to them were varied. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some looked almost human. But they all shared one thing: expressions of complete submission. How many worlds have you created? She asked. Thousands, said. Perhaps millions. We stopped counting long ago. And they all serve you willingly. They serve us because that is their purpose. A creation serves its creator. This is the natural order. Lieutenant spoke up. What happens to worlds that don't want to serve? His beautiful face flickered just for a moment. Then the serene expression returned. All worlds want to serve. It is built into their very nature. We designed it that way. Filed that flicker away for later. We'd like to see your ships, your technology. If we're going to serve you, we should understand what we're serving. That will not be possible, said. Our technology is sacred. Only the divine may understand it. Then how are we supposed to work with it? How are we supposed to help you if we don't know what you need? Paused. For the first time, the alien seemed uncertain. You will be given tasks, simple tasks. You will complete them. That is all you need to know. Doctor had been quiet, but now she stepped forward. I'm a physicist. I've been studying the energy signatures from your ships. They're remarkable, unlike anything we've ever seen, but they're also unstable. His black eyes fixed on her. Unstable. The readings fluctuate, not by much, but enough to notice, almost like your power source is struggling to maintain output. You are mistaken, said quickly. Our technology is perfect, eternal. It does not struggle. Maybe I am mistaken, Doctor said. I'm just a simple human after all. But if I'm right and your ships are having power problems, then maybe that's something we could help with. Humans are good at fixing things. Stared at her for a long moment. Then the alien turned and walked away. This meeting is over. You will be escorted out. On the way back to Virginia, the team compared notes. They're hiding something, said. When Doctor mentioned the power fluctuations, his whole communication pattern changed. The confidence disappeared. They were actually scared. Scared of what? Lieutenant asked. Us, said. They're scared of us. Back at the bunker, requested a private meeting with General and the other senior commanders. She laid out everything she had observed. "They call themselves gods," she said. "But gods don't get scared when you point out their weaknesses. Gods don't refuse to show you their technology because it's sacred. They refuse because they don't want you to see how it works or how it's failing." "That's a lot of speculation based on one conversation," said. "It's more than that. Has been analyzing their broadcasts. Every piece of communication from thee is designed to intimidate and impress. But when you look past the fancy words and the beautiful images, there's almost no actual information. They claim to have watched us for 10,000 years, but they can't name a single historical event. They claim to have created us, but they can't explain how." Colonel leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that they aren't gods. They're not our creators. They might not even be as powerful as they claim. This whole thing, the golden ships, the announcements, the 7-day countdown, it's all theater. They're trying to scare us into surrendering because they can't actually force us to." The room erupted into argument. Some commanders agreed with, others thought she was being dangerously optimistic, but General held up his hand for silence. "Let's say you're right," he said. "What do we do about it?" "We call their bluff," said. "We push back. Not with weapons, not yet, but with questions, with demands of our own. We make them prove they're gods, and if they can't, we show the world that humans don't bow to anyone." The next 3 days were tense. His team worked around the clock, gathering every piece of data they could about the. They analyzed broadcasts, studied energy readings, and interviewed people who had interacted with the aliens. A pattern emerged. They were powerful, yes. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humans had developed, but there were cracks in their divine facade. Their ships, for all their beauty, stayed in fixed positions. They never moved, never demonstrated the ability to travel faster than light. If they had truly come from distant stars, how had they gotten here? Their knowledge of Earth was shallow. They spoke in generalities, never specifics. When pressed for details about their creation of humanity, they changed the subject or claimed that such knowledge was too sacred to share. And most importantly, they never actually did anything divine. They made demands, they gave speeches, they looked impressive, but they never performed a miracle, never demonstrated godlike power. On the 6th day, presented her findings to the world. She didn't do it through official channels. She didn't wait for approval from generals or politicians. She simply walked into the embassy in New York with a camera crew and demanded to speak with the leader of the divine speakers. Appeared tall and golden and magnificent. "You were not invited, human." "Gods don't need invitations," said. "They know everything, they see everything, so you should have known I was coming." His expression flickered. "We knew, we simply chose to allow you to approach." "Prove it." The camera was rolling, broadcasting live to billions of people around the world. Could feel the weight of all those eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. "Prove that you're gods," she continued. "You claim to have created us. Show us how. You claim to have watched us for 10,000 years. Tell us something about our history that we don't already know. You claim to have power over life and death. Demonstrate it." Drew himself up to his full height. "We do not answer to our creations." "Then you're not gods," said. "You're just aliens with fancy ships and good lighting, and humans don't bow to aliens." The broadcast cut off abruptly as guards surrounded his team, but the damage was done. The message had gone out to the world. They detained and her team for 12 hours. They didn't hurt them, but they made it clear that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. When was finally released, she expected to find chaos waiting for her. Instead, she found hope. All around the world, people were asking the same questions she had asked. Why couldn't they prove their claims? Why were they so afraid of human curiosity? Why did gods need to hide? Religious leaders who had initially supported them began to back away. Scientists demanded access to technology. Governments that had been preparing to surrender started having second thoughts. and they responded with anger. On the seventh day, the day they had promised to begin, integration appeared in another global broadcast. But this time, the calm, divine manner was gone. "You have been given every opportunity to accept your place in the natural order," said, his voice sharp. "Instead, you have chosen defiance. This is disappointing. This is foolish. But it changes nothing. You will serve us. The only question is how much you will suffer before you accept this truth." The golden ships began to move. Watched from the bunker as the 12 vessels repositioned themselves around the globe. They were no longer hovering peacefully above cities. They were spreading out, forming a grid that covered the entire planet. "What are they doing?" General asked. Doctor was studying her instruments, her face pale. "They're building up power, some kind of energy field. It's going to cover the whole Earth." "An attack?" "No, or at least I don't think so. It's more like a cage. They're going to trap us." Watched the energy readings climb. They hadn't been able to prove they were gods, but they still had power, enough power to change the world, one way or another. "We have to stop them," she said. "How?" demanded. "Our weapons can't touch those ships, our missiles, our planes, nothing we have can reach them." "Then we don't use weapons," turned to Doctor. "You said their power sources were unstable. You said they were struggling to maintain output. What would happen if we made them struggle more?" Doctor thought for a moment. "If we could interfere with their energy field, disrupt it somehow, it might overload their systems. But we'd need to generate an enormous amount of electromagnetic interference, more than anything we have." "What about everything we have? What if we coordinated every electronic device on the planet? Every radio tower, every power plant, every cell phone?" "That's insane," said. "You're talking about deliberately creating a worldwide electromagnetic surge." "I'm talking about survival," said. "They expect us to bow down and accept our fate. They don't expect us to fight back. They definitely don't expect us to risk destroying our own technology just to stop them." "Because it's crazy," said. "Because it's human," replied. "We've always been willing to burn everything down rather than be slaves. That's what they don't understand about us. We'd rather destroy ourselves than give up our freedom." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Military leaders around the world coordinated in ways that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. Old enemies worked together. Rivals shared resources. Every radio station, every power plant, every broadcast tower was brought into the plan. Address the world one more time, explaining what was about to happen. "In 1 hour, we're going to create the largest electromagnetic pulse in human history," she said. "It will disable most of our technology. It will set us back decades. But it will also disrupt the energy field. It might even damage their ships. This is a gamble. It might not work. But it's our gamble to make. They want us to be their slaves. Today, we show them what free people are capable of." They responded immediately. His voice came through every speaker, every screen. "If you do this, you will destroy yourselves. Your civilization will collapse. Billions will die." "Maybe," said, "but we'll die free. And if any of us survive, we'll rebuild. We've done it before. We'll do it again. That's what humans do." The countdown began. Around the world, people gathered in the streets. Some prayed, some sang, some simply held hands and waited. Whatever happened next, they faced it together. In the final minutes, something unexpected happened. The ships began to descend, not to attack, to flee. They were pulling back from the planet, breaking their formation, retreating toward space. "They're running," Doctor said, her voice filled with disbelief. "They're actually running." But not all of them. The main ship, the one that had hovered over New York, stayed in place, and from that ship came one final transmission. "You think you have won," said. "You think your defiance matters. It does not. We have lived for 1,000,000 years. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. You are nothing, less than nothing. We will return, and when we do, there will be no mercy." The ship began to rise, following the others into space. Watched them go, her heart pounding. "Call it off," she said quietly. "Call off the pulse." "Are you sure?" asked. "They're leaving. We won. Let's not destroy our own world if we don't have to." The order went out. Power plants stood down. Radio towers powered off. The worldwide pulse never happened. But the world had changed. They were gone, but they had left behind more than just fear. They had left behind their embassy, their technology, and 1,000 questions that demanded answers. Led the first team into the abandoned structure in New York. What they found inside changed everything they thought they knew about the gods who had tried to claim them. The beautiful walls were hollow shells, filled with machinery that sparked and smoked. The impressive murals were projections, created by devices that were already failing. And in the deepest chamber, they found records, thousands of years of records that told the true story of the... "They were dying," Doctor said, translating the documents. "Their civilization peaked 100,000 years ago. Since then, they've been fatting, their technology failing, their population shrinking. They've been searching the galaxy for new sources of power." "Sources like us," said. "Not just power, hope, energy. The records call it sparks some kind of life force that only exists in certain species. They didn't create us. They found us. They've been watching us develop, waiting until we were advanced enough to be useful." "Useful how?" Doctor's face was grim. "They were going to harvest us, not as slaves, as fuel. The energy field they were building, it wasn't a cage. It was a collection device. They were going to drain the life force from every human on Earth." Felt sick. All their talk of gods and creators, all their promises of integration, it was all just a cover for genocide. "But they ran," she said. "Why? We didn't actually fire the pulse." "Because they saw something they didn't expect," Doctor said. "They expected fear, submission. Instead, they saw a species willing to destroy itself rather than be taken. They saw 7 billion people stand together against impossible odds. They saw us." The months after the departure were difficult. The world had been shaken to its core, and the aftershocks took time to settle. Governments struggled to explain what had happened. Religions struggled to reconcile their beliefs with the existence of alien life. And everywhere people asked the same question: would they come back? Was promoted to admiral and given command of a new division, Earth Defense Initiative. Her mission was simple but overwhelming: prepare humanity for the day they returned. The technology they had left behind became the foundation for a new era of human development. Within 6 months, scientists had reverse-engineered the power systems. Within a year, they had built the first human spacecraft capable of faster-than-light travel. They were right about one thing, Doctor explained during a briefing. Their civilization was dying. Their technology was brilliant, but they had stopped innovating centuries ago. They were just maintaining what they had. What's left of their systems is actually pretty simple once you understand the principles. Simple enough for us to improve on. We already have. Their ships used a kind of energy field that folded space. Ours will do the same thing, but more efficiently. We've also found solutions to problems they never figured out. Admiral, in some ways, we're already more advanced than they are. Found that hard to believe. They had seemed so powerful, so beyond human comprehension. But the more she learned, the more she understood the truth. They had been coasting on ancient achievements. They had stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped dreaming. And without dreams, even gods could fade. 2 years after the departure, humanity launched its first interstellar vessel, the HSS Hope, commanded the mission herself. The Hope was not as beautiful as the ships. It was functional, practical, built by human hands and human minds. But it worked. It carried a crew of 50 through the void between stars, crossing distances that would have taken centuries by conventional means in just a few weeks. Their destination was a world the records called, one of the 1,000 planets they claimed to have created. wanted to see for herself what kind of gods the really were. Was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, twin moons that hung in a purple sky. But as the hope drew closer, the scanners revealed something troubling. "There's no activity," Lieutenant reported. "No radio signals, no power sources, no signs of civilization at all." They landed near what looked like the ruins of a city. Tall spires rose from the jungle, covered in vines and moss. Streets had become rivers. Buildings had become mountains of rubble. Led an exploration team through the ruins, searching for any sign of the people who had once lived here. They found them in the central plaza, statues, thousands of them, depicting beings that looked vaguely humanoid but with longer limbs and larger eyes. The statues were arranged in circles, all facing inward, all frozen in poses of prayer or worship. "They're not statues," Doctor said quietly. She was scanning one of the figures with her instruments. "Their bodies, preserved somehow. They've been here for thousands of years." Felt cold despite the tropical heat. What happened to them? Same thing that almost happened to us. The harvested them. Drained every bit of life force from every living thing on this planet. The whole world is dead, Admiral, not just the people, everything. There are no insects, no bacteria, no plants that aren't already dying. They didn't just kill them, they erased them. The team moved through the ruins in silence after that. They found records, carvings, writings that told the story of the had been a peaceful people. They had welcomed thee as gods. They had served them faithfully for generations. And then, one day, they had decided they were ready for harvest. "This is what they had planned for us," said. "This is what we stopped." "We were lucky," Lieutenant said. "They didn't fight back, they didn't know they could." "Maybe, or maybe we're just too stubborn to know when we're supposed to give up." They visited 6 more worlds over the next year. Each one told the same story. They would arrive, claim to be creators, demand worship and service. The inhabitants would comply, grateful to have gods who cared for them. And then, centuries or later, they would harvest their faithful servants like crops from a field. But on the 7th world, they found something different. The planet was called in the records, but the people who lived there had their own name for it, home. And unlike the other worlds, this one was very much alive. They were tall and thin, with skin that shifted colors with their emotions. They met the hope with curiosity rather than fear, and they welcomed team into their cities. "We know of the," said their leader, a elder named whose skin rippled with shades of deep blue. "They came to us 3,000 years ago. They claimed to be our gods." "What happened?" asked. "We refused." Skin turned a defiant gold. "We looked at their claims and found them hollow. We looked at their power and found it limited. We told them we would not worship them and we would not serve them." "They didn't try to harvest you." "They tried. They brought their energy field just as they did with your world, but we had prepared. We had studied their technology. We found weaknesses. We fought back." "And you won." "No," said. "We lost badly. 3/4 of our population died in the war. Our cities burned. Our civilization nearly collapsed. But the lost too. The battle cost them resources they couldn't spare, ships they couldn't replace. They declared not worth the effort and left. They've never come back. They've returned 3 times since then. Each time we fight. Each time we lose people. Each time they lose more. The last time was 500 years ago. They have not returned since." "Thought about this for a long time. You've been fighting them for 3,000 years." "We have." "Why, if you can't win, if you just keep losing people, why not surrender? Why not find some other way?" Skin turned a complex pattern of colors that couldn't interpret. "I could ask you the same question, human. When they came to your world, you were ready to destroy your own civilization rather than submit. Why?" Didn't have to think about her answer. Because freedom is worth dying for. Because some things matter more than survival. "Yes," said. "That is why. They believe they are gods because they have power, but power is not divinity. True divinity, if such a thing exists, would understand that the spirit cannot be conquered. The mind cannot be enslaved. The heart will always choose freedom over safety. That sounds like something humans would say. Skin flickered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps that is why they fear you so much. You are not unique in resisting them, but you are unique in how quickly you understood the truth. Most species take centuries to see through their lies. Your people did it in days. Returned to Earth with more than just knowledge. She returned with an alliance. They agreed to share their technology, their tactics, their 3,000 years of experience fighting the. And they weren't the only ones. Word of humanity's defiance had spread through the galaxy. Other species, survivors, refugees, rebels, came to Earth seeking partnership. They brought their own knowledge, their own resources, their own determination to resist the false gods. Within 5 years, Earth had become the center of an interstellar alliance. Ships from a dozen worlds orbited the planet. Scientists from 100 species worked together in laboratories. And in command centers across the globe, military leaders prepared for the war they knew was coming. They would return, was certain of it. They had built their empire on the backs of conquered worlds. They couldn't allow a single species to defy them and survive. When they came back, humanity would be ready. They returned on a spring morning exactly 10 years after their first arrival. This time, they did not come with 12 ships. They came with 1,000. Watch them approach from the bridge of the HSS Defiance, the flagship of Earth's new space fleet. Around her, hundreds of other ships held position, human vessels, cruisers, craft from a dozen allied species. They brought everyone they had left, Doctor said, studying the sensor readings. This is it, their entire fleet. They're desperate, replied. They've been losing worlds for centuries. Their power is fading. They need what we have. So what do we do? Thought about everything she had learned over the past 10 years. They were ancient but weak, powerful but brittle. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had done it through lies and fear, not strength. When their victims refused to be afraid, they didn't know what to do. We give them a choice, she said. Her message was broadcast on all frequencies, in every language. Though whatever else they might be would hear it. Vessels, this is Admiral of the Galactic Alliance. You have entered defended space. You are not welcome here. You are not gods. You never were. You are a dying species, and your empire was built on murder and lies. The response came immediately. His voice, unchanged after 10 years. Foolish creatures, you cannot stand against us. Our power is absolute. Our victory is inevitable. Your power is failing, said. Your ships are running on reserves. Your population has been declining for 50,000 years. You came here hoping to harvest Earth and buy yourselves a few more centuries. But that's not going to happen. We know what you are. We know what you've done. And we're going to stop you. You will die. Maybe, but so will you. And unlike you, we're not afraid. The battle began. They had numbers on their side, but the Alliance had advantages of its own. Human engineers had spent 10 years improving on technology. Tacticians had 3 of experience fighting these enemies. And most importantly, the Alliance fought for their homes, their families, their freedom, while they fought only for survival. The first wave of ships crashed against Alliance defenses like water against stone. Golden vessels that had seemed so magnificent were torn apart by weapons designed specifically to exploit their weaknesses. Coordinated the battle from the Defiance, moving ships like pieces on a chess board. She had studied every record of every conflict that had ever fought. She knew their tactics, their patterns, their limitations. They always attack in formation, she said. They always target civilian populations first. They always retreat when they lose more than 30% of their forces. They're predictable. They've been fighting the same way for 100,000 years. And we haven't. We've been fighting different ways for all of human history. We've invented new tactics in the middle of battles. We've thrown out the rulebook when it stopped working. We adapt. They don't. The battle raged for 6 hours. Wave after wave of ships threw themselves against Alliance defenses. Thousands died on both sides. Lost count of the ships that fell, both enemy and friend. But slowly, inevitably, the tide turned. They were fighting for survival. The Alliance was fighting for something more. When a human ship was destroyed, 2 more took its place. When a cruiser fell, its crew sent out a final message of defiance that inspired a dozen others. When the Alliance lines bent, they did not break. And then, 6 hours into the battle, something remarkable happened. A single ship broke formation, not to retreat, to approach the Defiance. "They're hailing us," Lieutenant reported. His heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Put them through." It was not who appeared on the screen. It was another, younger looking, with eyes that held something other than contempt. "I am the said, we have met before." Remembered, the ambassador from the first visit, the one who had been scared when Doctor mentioned the power fluctuations. "Why are you contacting us?" "Because this battle is pointless." His voice was tired. "You have proven your strength. You have shattered our lies. Even if we somehow won this day, we would not have the resources to harvest your world. We would barely have enough to survive." "Then surrender." "I cannot. The Divine Council will never surrender. They would rather die and take everyone with them than admit they were wrong." "Then why are you talking to me?" Was silent for a moment. "Because you were right. In the embassy 10 years ago, you asked us to prove we were gods. We could not, because we are not. We never were. We were just a species like any other, with technology a little more advanced and pride far too great." "What do you want?" "Asylum. For those of us who want to live. For those of us who are tired of conquest and murder. There are more of us than the Council knows. Younger who question the old ways, who see your alliance and wonder if there might be another path." Looked at her command staff. They seemed as surprised as she was. "You're asking me to trust you," she said. "I am asking you to give us a chance. The same chance you gave yourself when you stood against us with nothing but courage and truth. Thought about the worlds they had destroyed, the billions of lives they had ended, the of suffering they had caused. She thought about what humanity had done in its own history, the wars, the conquests, the cruelty, and how, despite all of it, humans had always found a way to be better. "Stand down your ship," she said. "Power down your weapons. Any who wants to surrender do the same. Those who don't, well, the battle continues." Ship powered down immediately. Around the battlefield others followed, dozens at first, then hundreds. In the end, nearly a third of the fleet chose surrender over destruction. The Divine Council chose destruction, and the other leaders took their remaining ships into a final, suicidal charge against the Alliance fleet. They died as they had lived, consumed by pride, refusing to admit that they were not gods. When it was over, stood on the observation deck of the Defiance and watched the wreckage drift through space. So much death, so much waste, all because a dying species couldn't accept what they really were. But there was hope too. The surrendered were already being processed, not as prisoners but as refugees. The knowledge they carried, the technology they could share, would help the Alliance grow stronger. And more importantly, it proved that even the worst enemies could change. "What happens now?" Lieutenant asked, joining her at the window. "Now we rebuild," said. "Not just our fleet, our whole civilization. We're not alone in the universe anymore. We have allies, we have responsibilities, we have a chance to be better than we were. And the ones who surrendered will have to earn their place, prove they can be trusted. It won't be easy for them or for us. But if we can't forgive, if we can't grow, then we're no better than they were." The Alliance grew over the following decades. Humans and dozens of other species working together, exploring the galaxy, building something new. There were challenges, of course. Old hatreds didn't disappear overnight. Cultural differences caused friction. Progress was slow. But it was progress. Lived to see the first truly integrated world, a planet where humans and aliens worked side by side, raising families, building communities, dreaming of the future. She was an old woman by then, her hair white and her joints stiff, but her eyes still held the same fire they had when she first challenged in the embassy. "You changed everything," told her during one of their regular conversations. The former ambassador had become something like a friend over the years. When you refused to bow, you didn't just save your world. You showed the entire galaxy that gods could be questioned, that power could be challenged, that the old ways didn't have to be the only ways. "I just asked some questions," said. "No, you believed the answers mattered. You believed that truth was more important than comfort. You believed that freedom was worth dying for." His ancient eyes gleamed. That is what humans brought to the galaxy. Not weapons, not technology, belief, determination, hope. "That sounds like something a god would do," said with a small smile. "Perhaps." His mouth curved in an expression that had learned was a smile. "Or perhaps it sounds like something better than a god. It sounds like something human." Died peacefully in her sleep 3 years later. She was buried on Earth in a small cemetery overlooking the ocean. Thousands attended the funeral, humans and aliens, friends and former enemies, all gathered to honor the woman who had looked at false gods and refused to kneel. Her epitaph was simple, chosen from her own words. "Gods don't need to prove themselves. Humans don't need gods." Above her grave, ships from 100 worlds passed through the sky, carrying beings who had learned the same lesson. The universe was vast and strange and sometimes cruel, but it wasn't ruled by gods. It was shaped by those with the courage to question, the strength to resist, and the wisdom to know that true power comes not from domination, but from the freedom to choose your own destiny. That was humanity's gift to the stars. That was the true power the false gods never understood.